We're excited to be able to present this special edition of our Publisher Spotlight series with the creators of the Kickstarter sensation Tuskegee Airs. Greg Burnham and Marcus Williams are the creative minds behind Tuskegee Airs and Heir Apparent, their publishing company, and they're joining us today from Atlanta, where it's, I think, a little nicer than it is up here in the New York area. Tuskegee Airs blends sci-fi adventure with an historical angle, and we're honored to be able to make it accessible to schools and libraries through Comics Plus. And we're grateful to have Greg and Marcus here to join us today in this conversation. So let's jump in. Greg and Marcus, let's talk a little bit about Tuskegee Airs itself. How did you come up on the setting and the concept and the story itself? Give us a little background on how it came together.
I write children's books as well, and Marcus actually illustrated those. And so we were doing a book signing in a mall just in the suburbs of Atlanta. And, it was a really good signing. And then we had like an elderly man walk up, and he was looking, he was, complimenting us. But then he was also like, why is there no aviation? Why is there nothing, about the history of Black aviators on here? And we're like, well, that's kind of specific. Marcus, I think, was like, I was thinking of drawing like some young aviators. Marcus does this really cool thing where he takes like superheroes and he draws them when they're young. It's really cool. So we had a bunch of those kind of posters up on the table. And Marcus mentioned, he was thinking about doing it. And I was like, hey, we should write some stuff up, like put it in the future and really, go crazy with it. And so then Marcus mentioned the robots, like adding the mechs, and our heads just kind of exploded because it was literally the thing that we wish we could have seen when we were kids. And we just started working on it from there. Marcus posted some art online, and we didn't know we were going to go viral. That wasn't the goal. We were just trying to see, he posted this picture right here, hand drawn, and it went viral. People went crazy, and they were like, we need more of this, take my money, all that good stuff. So that's how we were, how Tuskegee Airs was founded.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned that you and Marcus have worked together before. How did you first start working together in comics before Tuskegee?
Like 20 years ago, I was looking for an artist. I had only been in Atlanta for maybe a year, and I wanted to do a comic book. And so, I was looking for an artist. So I went on this like 2-month search, and, I kept coming up empty. And then one day, one of my friends that I played basketball with, he brought Marcus over to my house, and we clicked immediately, and we created a comic book. It was a cool little comic book. I'm going to flash it. No, Marcus, I'm sorry. Marcus is sharing. Don't worry about it. But yeah, it was a cool book. We were selling them out of a local comic shop, but we were printing everything up on our own at Kinko's, is what it was called at the time. And so we were losing money every time we sold a book, but it was like, we're young and we're happy because we're selling books. At the same time, we realized quickly that we needed to get an understanding of the business side in order to, actually do this at a high level.
Cool. So the story itself for Tuskegee Airs, obviously you've got the historical background to the setting. And you mentioned kind of how the guy came up and had this really specific request. Talk about some of the research that went into both the storytelling, the visual design. How cool? What was your goal in terms of historical accuracy versus historical inspiration? And what kind of research did you do? Not just to find out if anybody else had done it, but how to tell this story in a way that you thought would be interesting.
So the first part, I'm a history major. History is very important to me. And that was why we suggested moving it into the future. So this way we don't have to change any history, about the Tuskegee Airmen at all. We can, so the kids can like reference back to it. And we have those little instances where we talk about like the principles of the Tuskegee Airmen, or just little nuggets, you know, to get people to hopefully research. And we've seen it like over the last few years. We have people always inboxing us saying, I didn't know anything about the Tuskegee Airmen until I read your book. And then it made me go back and do all this research. So that's kind of what the goal is. So yeah, we really dug in and studied. We went to Moton Fields, which is in Tuskegee, Alabama. They have a museum. We were there for hours. They were looking at us like, what are you guys still doing here? But yeah, so, you know, and it's consistent, it's constant research. We actually, through our travels, we connected with a lady named Zelly Orr, and she knows everything about the Tuskegee Airmen. She's a historian, she's written books. And so anytime we have any questions, she's like a huge resource for us. We actually even made her a character in the book. She's like an AI, you know, instructor. And yeah, so, you know, we're constantly researching, but that was the main thing. We didn't want to alter or change any of the history. So put it in the future and reach back to it.
Yeah, and I can talk to the point about designing the characters. The look was the first thing after me and Greg started talking about the story. You know, after we was bouncing all over the walls and so forth in excitement, I told him, I said, give me a couple of days, and let me get a feel for, you know, the design and what I would love to see for the character design. And that's where the first drawing came up, but it was in research. We both understood that we wanted instantaneous recognition of the Tuskegee Airmen feel. So the character design is the story takes place 80 years into the future from now, but their uniforms look instantly classic. They have the aviation helmet and goggles. They have the you know, the jacket, the aviation jacket. But of course, if you know, you come through here and you see the cool shoulder pads, you see the cool futuristic belt. They have these cool, you know, mechanical weapons and things like that. And of course, I added the robot, the mech into this image because when you're designing, you want to be able to communicate as quickly as possible. So bringing those two worlds together, historical and futuristic, sci-fi, and accurately depicting something that made you think of the Tuskegee Airmen. So that's what Greg was saying. As soon as this was posted and people said, shut up, if this is what I think it is, shut up and take my money. That was the goal. It was to say, we don't want anyone to look at this and say that, you know, they have to wonder what we're doing, of course. But yeah, the design came out of that. And, you know, after designing and getting something vivid and futuristic, I think we actually hit the mark design-wise. And that's where a lot of people sometimes when they see the initial cover, they don't realize what time frame, because we did that on purpose. The characters are sitting in a P-51 Mustang, just renovated. And that's on purpose. We wanted to show that classical, you know, feel. But soon throughout the first book, they get a hold of these amazing jets, and these jets can transform into these giant robots. And I hate drawing, you know, mechanical stuff, but I spent time researching, trying to make sure our robots and our technology looked unique enough to our series, because I'm a huge anime fan, and I followed the mech genre, the giant robot genre, for a long time. So it was a lot of meticulous, just kind of looking around. And the cool thing is there is not a lot of competition for animated looking African-American characters or Black characters. So you may see one or two throughout some series, but a whole cast of something that looks and feels authentically just like it's supposed to be animated. That was also the goal from the beginning. We said a cartoon should happen with this series eventually. So that was the design part of it, yeah.
Cool. So talk a little bit, you alluded to it there, talk a little bit about both what both of you hoped readers would take from this story, and particularly the representation aspect.
Absolutely. I think the first thing that me and Greg decided on was how do we respectfully tell a story that pays homage to the Tuskegee Airmen without feeling as though we're trying to, poach or, just make financial gain from that history, because the actual heirs are very much alive and still breathing. They're everywhere. So that was the initial concept between our conversations. How do we do that respectfully? So we made sure that readers didn't get offended first. We didn't want to create blood relatives, so to speak, fictional blood relatives. So this cast of characters, they are new pilots. They are not blood relatives. They are not actual, in the bloodline, but they're taking on the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen. And we wanted that to come apart in both the titles. So usually me and Greg, we tell people all the time, we have to fight to decide on a name. And it came up in our first meetings about it, like, we should call it Tuskegee Heirs. Yeah, that's good. Let's go with that one. That makes sense. It has that feel, the legacy. And of course, when we tell people they're inheriting the legacy, and they're not blood relatives, it means something to that concept. Can young people look into history and learn something about, where they came from, and then accept all of the wonderful things that they learned from those individuals, those giants that they're standing there on the shoulders of, and all of that came together. We wanted that to be, and luckily and gratefully, through all of the Comic-Cons, we do about 30 shows a year before COVID, comic conventions, and we talk to thousands and thousands of people, and we get that interaction just about, all the time. And it's really rewarding to know that it worked, where we can actually say, well, no, they're not blood descendants. They're just inheriting the legacy, and they look back to that history. So yeah, me and Greg, and of course I lean on Greg in regards to his history. And we're constantly researching for things that we can actually convey and put, Greg was using the word nuggets of, history throughout. We never wanted to actually pause someone reading the book and say, well, in 19 such and such, this happened. We wanted it to feel very organic. And that was something we planned as well. So even in reading, we said, well, can we put this in a third grader's hand and, a 30-year-old's hands, and have them read and maybe be entertained and also learn little things, maybe subtly, where it doesn't feel so abrupt, like a slap in the face, like stop having fun and learn history. It feels more organic. So we planned that in the DNA of the story.
Yeah, and I would add also, especially for the younger kids, so we made sure that our kids are not superheroes. They don't have superpowers. They're really good at what they do, but it's because of their work ethic and, the time that they develop their skills. They all are pretty good in different forms of martial arts. They're all awesome pilots, of course. So we wanted to put that part in and kind of stress that as well, because I also did some coaching for about 15 years, coaching basketball and baseball. And the younger kids, it's really important to develop, that sense of work ethic. We get to do it all the time at the table, like Marcus said, because Marcus, I think he's this amazing illustrator, but he'll tell people all the time, it's not, he wasn't born that way. It took a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time, and practice to become good at these things. So that's another thing, we really stress to the kids, yeah, no, these kids are you could be a pilot. And we've come across a bunch of a lot of different a lot of different organizations that are teaching kids to fly. And we can literally say such and such is teaching kids to fly here if you're in this city. So it's kind of that thing where we're subliminally teaching them that they can be excellent as well. So that's a huge part of our goals.
Cool. So we've got an audience of librarians and educators. Let's talk a little bit about your experiences with comics and libraries, both personally as kids growing up and potentially as adults, And then particularly the feedback you've gotten on this from whether it's schools, parents. We talked a little bit about that in the our initial call. Get into that a little bit about what's been your own experiences and what's been the feedback you've gotten from schools and libraries about the comic.
Absolutely. Doing I got to do I was a part of a library tour here in Georgia, local libraries. I think it had to be about it was over 15, I want to say, and they were trying to find visual and creative careers to bring in and do little workshops, and the age ranged from elementary to high school, and it was really, really, really helpful for me as both an artist. I'm not a teacher per se, but I love getting my skills in front of young people to kind of encourage them to really knock out that perception that you have to be born, like Greg was saying, you have to be just blessed with drawing talent. And I wasn't. No one believes me though. But doing this tour, of course, with the libraries, I said yes immediately. It really set the mode, because in the library it's very quiet and somber and all this stuff. And by the end of the actual workshops, all the kids are engaged. They're excited. They're asking questions. They're talking to each other about their ideas. And I got a little chatty in the library every time, but I think it was scheduled, so it was okay. But just getting in front of young people and showing them not only that they can take their creative careers and add new skills that was not expensive. There's a very big gap with parents and understanding that all of the tools I use to create the comic, I use a $40 software to create the images that you guys are seeing that I'm showing you guys, to actually draw and color with, and it's called Paint Tool Sci. It's a very cheap rinky-dink software, but I do that on purpose so I can go in front of kids and say, your parent doesn't have to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get you started. And so, of course, all the parents in the back of the room are like, what is it called now? And that's very helpful to get the kids engaged, get them started, get their tools and so forth. But the feedback we got from the libraries is just more confirmation. It's just something that they don't get to see. Seeing art being created firsthand for some reason is still magical. I'm okay with that because it helps me, continue getting in front of people. But it's the feedback from the librarians, even when we go into schools. We get teachers and educators and these librarians saying, I've never seen my kids sit this still and or be this focused for this duration. You were in front of them for an hour and they've never been this quiet. Fourth graders, even adults. So it really does engage. Just seeing the content and seeing it, being broken down and explained. But that empowerment of exposure is what I like to call it and consider, because it is. And I use the analogy of, you get close to a flame, you can feel it and you won't forget it. Heat has a very unique thing, and seeing something like this being created for young people all the way up to adults, it's just something that can change your life path. So, even when me and Greg go out to these places that we've never really done, we've had a lot of institutions, we've talked to colleges, libraries, schools, and other institutions. It really has an effect on people just to see this stuff in person. And unfortunately, they don't often see, young Black entrepreneurs, showing creative work, showing this other side. And that's also something we're okay with, just changing the perspective. So it's helped out really, really in our business, as well as just us as creators to kind of get that feedback directly.
Yeah, and just speaking to the library, I love the library. I lived in the library as a kid, all the way through college. Like when I had off time during the day, I would, instead of going to my dorm, I would go to the library. So I think as a writer, it helped me to you can go anywhere you want when you're in the library. That's how I always looked at it. And I think it helped me with my creativity because I was able to see all these things that weren't in my, weren't at my reach, but I could go and read and learn about anything anywhere. So I think it's huge from that standpoint. I still, before COVID, I used to go to the library to do a lot of my writing because the you know, the aura is just special there. But I think it just, you know, being able to have these comics in the library, we got yelled at a lot by librarians all over the country when we just had the floppy, you know, single issues. Once we got this graphic novel that Marcus was showing and then took away, once we got the volume 1, it has the 3 in. Now we've been getting, you know, libraries to order, but just, you know, being able to have it to where the kids have a chance to get to the book without having to go through, you know, a lot of work is just awesome for us. And, you know, I can only imagine as Comics Plus keeps adding more titles, what it's going to do for the kids who love comics.
And that's and I have to definitely add this little tidbit, which is unfortunately comic shops in a lot of towns have been closing down even before COVID. This is just it's a thing where if comic shop owners don't expand what they offer beyond comics, card games, tabletop gaming, and I've got to see this intimately because I worked with a comic store owner on a comic book called Hero Cats of Stellar City for a number of years. And I watched as he balanced the two of comics and what was popular. Unfortunately, a lot of comic shops closed down. So once that happens, these towns and these cities, the parents come to us and say, well, we don't have a comic shop. There is no comic shop for us to get your book in. Where can I get your book? And in a library that offers comics and offers these graphic novels and offers these different kinds of, you know, variety of stories, it's absolutely essential. There's nowhere else for these families to go where they feel comfortable and they feel welcome. A lot of comic shops also don't really have the best reputation for being the most welcoming or personable, because you know it's a very niche you know, kind of market for store owners. And a family could walk in, they're working on it. They have free comic book day and comics fest, but for the most part, you never know. If you walk into a random comic shop, you could definitely get a different personality. But the library feels safe. It's very familiar, and there's a comic section now, so it works out really great. So you guys are amazingly necessary for us. Yeah.
So we've got about 5 minutes. So I want to cover a couple of quick things, but somebody had actually asked about the availability in print. Can libraries order the print graphic novel through you guys? Do you have a print distributor? How can libraries get the print copy?
Well, we distribute ourselves, so you can go online and order on the website. You can also email, like if we do have like bulk rates that we can help people out with. So if you email us at TuskegeeAirs@gmail.com, then we can definitely chat it up and figure out how to work with you. But also, like if you're just ordering like 1 or 2 copies, you can go directly on the website, TuskegeeAirs.com, and order, and we'll ship it out.
Cool. So you guys talked about you've got in development a reading guide. Talk a little bit about that. What is it going to include, and when do you expect it to be available?
Definitely. This is something where me and Greg we got excited with the digital offerings of our book, because in print, to print another, you know, whole book is tough to say, well, we got to print just as many reading guides to go with the comics when we sell them, or we have to increase the page size to fit it in the books in the back. And the digital allows us to create something that once the, let's say an educator or a parent reads through the book with a group of kids, they're on the digital offering that we're trying to work all of the kinks out of right now would be another, you know, springboard of information that would literally cross-reference what was just in that book, what was just in that issue, and we can target everything from history, sci-fi, geographical, and you know, social elements that were in the book, because we absolutely have them in the book. All of the I'm a huge tech buff. All of the technology is based on what's currently like in its infancy today. And we push that 80 years. We try to, hypothesize what it'll look like 80 years from now. So these are real things that a teacher or an educator or a parent can then say, well, look at this technology, and we'll have that information to bring a springboard into deeper learning. So now you're actually diving in more so and being more engrossed. And hopefully we can actually we're working with some teachers to help us get that, some of the information formatted into what's used in the classroom. So they can actually have these, little break it and say, well, this goes with our curriculum that we're teaching about, science, technology, history, or whatever. And we want to offer that with each book. So every issue will have a companion piece, and each of those things, we don't want it to be 8,000 pages long, but it'll be something that's really helpful into starting that conversation. We never want our kids or any family or any reader to just read it for entertainment. Me and Greg absolutely scrutinize everything we put in the book to say there's real stuff. There's adults that have never heard of Olmec heads. And at the second issue, we actually have the team going to Mexico, and they see an Olmec head. And we've had adults come to us say, well, I don't know what that is. Oh, that's real? That's a real thing? And we're like, yes, it is. And that's the goal. We want to start those conversations with our readers and so forth. But having that historical information, all the geography, I think that would, we're really excited of having that. And digital allows us to do that.
Cool. All right. That's a nice STEM and historical connection with what people might initially just think is entertainment and good for independent reading. The last question we turn it back over to Raquel. What's next for Tuskegee Airs? You got any specific plans? I know there's rumors of maybe a cartoon. What's next on the agenda?
Yeah, we're striving hard to get the cartoon done. We're behind the scenes doing some stuff we can't all the way talk about, but yeah, cartoons would be huge. One of our goals was actually to get into libraries and schools. So that one is, thanks to Comics Plus, that one is really helping us achieve. But yeah, animation. We're also a publishing company, so we're looking to adding more titles. I have another comic called The Search for Sadaka. The second issue will be done in a couple of days, hopefully. But yeah, we're working on some other stuff as well. So keep publishing and keep growing the business.
Children's books are coming.
That too.
We've been talking about children's books for Tuskegee Heirs and other properties. People treat children's books differently. It's just weird. They'll look at a comic, they'll look at a graphic novel, and they'll look at a children's book and be like, I get that comic out of here. But it's nothing we want. We're not mad at it. We just have to create content for that customer, because we do love children's book. Me and Greg used to go to Savannah Children's Book Festival every year. So,
all right. So Greg Burnham, Marcus Williams, heir apparent, Tuskegee Airs. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll turn it back over to Raquel now for the rest of the session. Appreciate it.
Thank you.